This is a step-by-step guide on how you can buy 5 properties in 5 years with £100,000. This is the same way we've helped hundreds of investors to build their own portfolios in our sourcing business. I'm going to go through the different stages from buying your first property, repeating the process, to then scaling it to 5 properties. Grab a pen and paper and let's jump into it. So I know £100,000 is a lot of money. I completely understand that, but I do get a lot of people asking, oh VJ, what should I do with £100,000? And I've kind of made this video for them because yes, £100,000 is a lot of money, but let's be honest, if you can get 5 properties, 5 cash flowing and appreciating properties for £100,000, £20,000 each on average, you won't be complaining. And before we dive in, I'm just going to say, don't focus too much on the numbers. They could be different. Yours could be lower or higher, but the whole point of this is to focus on the strategy, because whether you've got £100,000 or £200,000 or even £50,000, using this strategy will be able to make your money go a lot further, where you're able to buy more properties, more money in your pocket. And this is exactly the same strategy how I've been able to purchase 20 properties now for my own portfolio, and we've helped plenty of others. We've helped Barbara buy 5 properties, we've helped Ian buy 7 properties, Joe Eden 5 properties, and we've helped hundreds of others buy multiple properties using this same strategy. So if you look at the old traditional way of investing, and this is pretty much what my dad did as well, the old way of investing into a property would go something like this. It's where you purchase a property. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that this property is worth £200,000, okay? £200,000 property. What normally you would do is you'd put down a 25% deposit, which is £50,000, and then you'd have to pay your stamp duty. I know stamp duty at the time was not 5%, but just for easy maths, we'll do 5% stamp duty. Then you've got your other fees like your solicitor fees, your broker fees, your surveyor fees. Let's just say all in, that would be, I don't know, £3,000, right? So your stamp duty here would be £10,000. And then if you just add these numbers up, your 25% deposit, your stamp duty, and your 3K for your legal fees and so on, essentially this property right here would cost you £63,000. But the problem with this now is that this £63,000 you've got, right? If you just bought it the old traditional way, this £63,000 is now stuck in that one property, right? And you almost have to now wait a lot of years for the property price to go up for you to make money. Yes, you make some cash flow in this at the start, but always remember, guys, that the most money you make is from the forced appreciation of the property or just long-term value, right? So this £63,000 is stuck. If you've got £100,000, that technically means you're stuck at one property. You wouldn't be able to buy multiple properties using the same figures. We'll get back to the video in a few seconds, but 70% of you watching this video aren't subscribed to my channel. Please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button and buy more properties in the next few months. I'll be sharing everything so you can learn from my mistakes for free. Anyways, back to the video. And this is why I like the strategy what I'm going to talk about, which is the BRR strategy, which is buy, refurb, rent and refinance. And how it usually works is, instead of buying a property that is a turnkey property like this one, where you put down a 25% deposit and almost wait years for any of the magic to happen, in BRR, you're essentially buying an undervalued property which needs a lot of work to it. And what I'll do is I'll put some pictures of an example of one of the recent projects that we've done. You essentially want to buy these old smelly properties, right? Because that's where you're going to get it at a discount. When you get a discount, you're going to refurb it, add value to the property, and then you refinance or rent it out. The whole point of this is that you're forcing the appreciation, you're forcing the value add, where you gain instant equity. How BR usually works is, just so you really understand, is I'm going to go through an example and what the figures will look like. So using the same example, the £200,000 property, rather than buying a £200,000 property, which is already, ready to go, there's no value add. Instead, you would buy a property worth £120,000. Now, these are the kind of properties that we are sourcing day in, day out. I'd say we are sourcing around 15 to 20 properties a month, and this price range, we're doing at least 5 to 6 of these, right? So you'd buy a £120,000 property, your 25% deposit would be 30K. Okay, and then you'd have stamp duty, 5% stamp duty, which is going to be 6K. Okay, and then again, solicitor fees, broker fees, surveyor fees, let's say all in, added up, would be 4K. And then of course, the most important thing is, because this is a property in a bad condition, you're going to have to refurb it. A refurb on this sort of property would cost around, I'd say, £30,000. So when you add all these costs up, your 30K, your 6K, your fees and refurb costs, this would cost you now £70,000. Okay, now you must be thinking, oh, £70,000 is very similar to what the other property would have been. In fact, it's more, but this is where the real magic happens. Just so everyone understands, you're putting down a 25% deposit and the other 75% would be a bridging loan, unless you've got cash for it. But most people will use a bridging loan, okay? Because you can't take out a buy-to-let mortgage on a property that you're gonna, give a full refurb. So this one, obviously your 25% will be £30,000 and then the remaining will be 90K. Okay, so anyways, what happens is you have now invested £70,000 of your money in the deal. But because now you've refurbed the property, you brought it back to a standard, you've added value to the property, what happens is that essentially this £120,000 property now actually is worth £200,000. Because think about it, you spent 30K on the refurb, you've already bought it undervalued because it's in a poor condition. So this property now is £200,000. So we've got the £200,000 here. What you would do is you would refinance this £200,000 property on a 75% loan to value. Okay, and that would be £150,000. So you now have £150,000 into your bank account. What you do with the £150,000, you pay off the bridging loan, which remember was £90,000. So you've got 60K left. And then with that 60K, what you do is you pay a portion of the money that you put in, because remember, you've paid £70,000 off your own money in. So what you do is you've got 60K left, you pay back yourself. And what happens is, and this is the beauty of BRR, what happens is that you now have, let me just write it here, minus 70K, you now have £10,000 left in the deal. Now, if you compare it to the turnkey property, that had £63,000 left in the deal. With BRR, you've got £10,000 left in the deal. If you look at it, both are the same properties, both are worth £200,000. It just, you've changed the strategy. Rather than buying a ready-made property where you don't add any value, you're buying a property that you add value to and you yourself take control of the situation and make it a £200,000 property. Imagine saying you've got one property which literally costs you £10,000. And just a little disclaimer that this £10,000 left in the deal, I've done plenty of these myself. We've helped plenty of our investors where you're leaving in £10,000. But realistically, if you want to be realistic about things, where we invest, in the Northeast, you're living in about £15,000 per deal per property. If you're leaving £15,000, that's very realistic. It's not like over hype, right? So that's £10,000, right? But what we're going to do just for this video now, I've shown you the process, but just to be very conservative, let's just say your first property has cost you £15,000, okay? Rather than £10,000, £15,000. And this first property you can realistically do in 1 year. So your first property cost you £15,000 and it's taken you 1 year. And the reality is the second deal will be no different. You would buy a similar property, similar kind of price range, right? Because now you know the numbers, you know what you can buy it for, you know what a refurb costs, So it'd be silly for you to now try and do something else, right? You have to just copy and paste the process. So the second property would also cost you £15,000, right? Because you're doing a BRR. So essentially, after year 2, you now have 2 properties. And then as silly or simple as it sounds, you just keep repeating the process. You buy a third property for £15,000, right? And then year 3. But now, remember how you had £100,000 to start off with, right? So let me just draw this up. So you had £100,000 to start off with, and you've essentially bought 3 properties for £45,000, right? Because £15,000 each. If you take away that, you now only have left £55,000 left. But remember, initially, your all-in cost will be around £70,000. It's only after you refinance that you're able to basically pull out most of your money. So you still need £70,000 to start off with, to put the money to deploy the capital, and then you can refinance a bit. But right now, you've got £55,000 left after buying those 3 properties. You need £15,000 more. So how do you do that? There's a few ways, but I'm going to show you the easiest or simplest way where you're not relying on someone else. The first way is, obviously, you can raise investor finance, you can borrow the money, and you can, do a joint venture, whatever it is. But a better way, and what most people will do, who, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, that you can't raise any money, you don't have access to any money. So you only have £55,000. So what do you do then? And this is the beauty with property, because we're now on to year 3, right? Hopefully you're with me. We're now on to year 3. You've got 3 properties. So the first property you bought, if you think about it, the first property you bought has now been owned for 3 years, right? And property prices, generally speaking, they go up in value by 3 to 5% annually, right? But let's just be conservative. Let's go with a 3% annual, increase in value. So your first property was worth 200K in the first year, right? Was worth 200K when you refinance it. And then after year 1, that property, if you're going by the 3% growth rate, that will be worth 206k. And then in year 2, your property number 1, right, because it's the first property bought, will be worth 212k. Again, because you're adding 3% onto the value of the property each year. And then year 3, this property would be worth 218k. Your property price, your first property, is now worth 218,000 pounds, conservatively speaking. It doesn't go up in 3% year by year perfectly, you know, it's an average. We're just keeping things simple. So you've now got your first property, which is worth 218,000 pounds. Remember, you're currently on a mortgage on that 200,000 pounds property, because that's why you refinance it. That 75% loan to value would be worth 150k mortgage, right? You've got 150k mortgage on a 200,000 pounds house. What you can do is, depending on your terms, when you can refinance, you can now refinance this 218,000 pound property, right? Because it's been a few years, it's gone up in value. And you can also do the same where you pull out 75% loan to value, and this one would be 163,500 pounds. Okay, I'm running out of space here, but hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. So if you just minus the 150,000 pounds and the 163,000 pounds, you've actually gained 13,500 in equity. You can pull that money out, add that 113,000 pounds to your cash pot of 55,000 pounds. And what does that do? That totals 68.5k. So that means you now have the money for your fourth property, and you just repeat the process. And then again, when you go to refinance that, you're going to need to top it up again for your fifth property. And what do? You refinance your second property that you bought, because it's now been 3 years since you've owned that, and that's also gone up in 3%. It's basically everything that I've just gone through now, guys. Everything here is literally the process that we use. And as simple as it sounds, there's nothing genius in it. It's just, you have to just keep doing it. You have to trust the process. Of course, you have to look at the numbers. You know, as I said at the start, your numbers aren't going to be completely accurate. They could be higher, could be lower. But the point is, with one pot of cash, with 100,000 pounds, you can buy your first few properties, refinance, let the first few properties of the value go up for that. Then you can refinance and just keep topping it up, right? That way you can keep buying multiple properties with the same pot of cash. And at the end of year 5, you now have 5 properties, and those 5 properties, give or take, I'd say conservatively, or 650, you cash flow 300, right? So you've got 1,500 pounds in cash flow. And not only that, you have a £1 million portfolio, right? £1 million portfolio. A £1 million portfolio that's going to go up in value by 3, 4, 5%. All of that for £100,000. And that's essentially, guys, how you buy 5 properties with £100,000 in 5 years time. If you like this video and you want to learn more about BRR, I've also made a video which is how I bought 4 properties for £66,000. It's going to give you real numbers, because these are real 4 properties that I actually ended up buying for £66,000. Go watch that video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you soon.